Although the Darwinian atheist may firmly believe that he is on the terra firma of science, in his appeal, even demand for methodological naturalism, the fact of the matter is that Darwinian atheists are adrift in an ocean of fantasy and imagination with no discernible anchor for reality to grab onto. Basically, because of reductive materialism and/or methodological naturalism, the atheistic materialist who believes Darwinian evolution to be true, and since he can't account for our subjective conscious experience, is forced to believe that he does not really exist as a real person, but that he is merely a neuronal illusion. Which is to say, the Darwinian materialist is forced to believe that only his material brain is real, and that his subjective conscious experience of being a real person is merely a neuronal illusion. As Professor Alex Rosenberg, who is an atheistic materialist, succinctly stated, "There is no self in, around, or as part of anyone's body. There can't be." In what should be needless to say, if your supposedly scientific theory of Darwinian materialism is telling you that you do not actually exist as a real person, then you do not have a scientific theory. You have a blatant contradiction of reality. As Rene Descartes would have put it, who is there to do the doubting that you exist as a real person? The denial of the existence of real persons is only the beginning of troubles for the Darwinist. The Darwinian materialist, besides being forced to claim that he himself is merely a neuronal illusion, is also forced to claim that he, as a neuronal illusion, is simultaneously having, despite all appearances to the contrary, the illusion of free will. As Professor Jerry Coyne himself put it, free will is an illusion so convincing that people simply refuse to believe that we don't have it. That he could actually say that with a straight face is amazing. His statement should literally be the #1 example of a self-contradictory statement given in Philosophy 101 classes. On top of that, and as Professor Alvin Plantinga has shown in his evolutionary argument against naturalism, the Darwinian materialist is also forced into holding that all his beliefs about reality are unreliable and/or illusory. As Richard Dawkins himself honestly admitted, since we are creatures of natural selection, we cannot totally trust our senses. Evolution only passes on traits that help a species survive, and not concerned with preserving traits that tell a species what is actually true about life. Yet, as Nancy Pearcey pointed out, ideas were selected for their survival value, not for truth value. So how can we know whether the theory of evolution itself is one of those false ideas? The theory undercuts itself. Moreover, as Donald Hoffman has shown via computer simulation of population genetics, the Darwinian materialist is also forced to hold that he has illusory perceptions of reality. As Stephen Novella of Yale stated, the illusion that our brains evolved to have, a very compelling and persistent illusion, namely that the reality we perceive is real, rather than a constructed representation. On top of that, since he has no real-time empirical evidence substantiating his grandiose claims, that Darwinian materialist must also, as Stephen Jay Gould himself honestly admitted, make up illusory just-so stories with the illusory and impotent designer substitute of natural selection. And he must do this so as to explain away the overwhelming appearance, or illusion, of design that he himself is seeing. As Richard Dawkins himself honestly admitted, yet the living results of natural selection overwhelmingly impress us with the appearance of design as if by a master watchmaker, impress us with the illusion of design and planning. As if all that was not bad enough, the Darwinian materialist also must make up illusory meanings and purposes for his life, since the hopelessness of the nihilism inherent in his atheistic worldview is simply too much for him to bear. He must also hold morality to be subjective and illusory, since he has rejected God, who is the source for all real and objective moral standards and truths. And finally, since beauty cannot be grounded within his materialistic worldview, the atheist must also hold beauty itself to be illusory. As Charles Darwin himself stated, they believe that very many structures have been created for beauty in the eyes of man, or for mere variety. This doctrine, if true, would be absolutely fatal to my theory. And there you go. If you sanely believe that beauty actually exists, then Darwin's theory is dead. The kicker in all this is that quantum mechanics itself has now shown, via the falsification of what is termed realism by Leggett's inequality, and by the Wheeler's delayed choice experiment with atoms, that material particles are not the ultimate substratum upon which everything else is based. As Professor Andrew Truscott succinctly put it, at the quantum level, reality does not exist if you are not looking at it. As far as empirical science is concerned, materialism is falsified. And since reductive materialism undergirds Darwinian evolution, then Darwinian evolution is also falsified along with materialism. Many times, atheists will adamantly claim that science is based upon the presupposition of methodological naturalism, but nothing could be further from the truth. All of science, every nook and cranny of it, is based on the presupposition of intelligent design, and is certainly not based on the presupposition of methodological naturalism. From the essential Christian presuppositions that undergird the founding of modern science itself, namely, that the universe is contingent and rational in its foundational essence, and that the minds of men, being made in the image of God, can therefore dare to understand the rationality that God has imparted onto the universe, to the intelligent design of the scientific instruments and experiments themselves, to the logical and mathematical analysis of experimental results themselves. From top to bottom, science itself is shot through and through with intelligent design, and is certainly not to be considered a natural endeavor of man. Not one scientific instrument would ever exist if men did not first intelligently design that scientific instrument. Not one test tube, microscope, telescope, spectroscope, or etc. was ever found just laying around on a beach somewhere which was naturally constructed by nature. Not one experimental result would ever be rationally analyzed, since there would be no immaterial minds to rationally analyze the immaterial logic and immaterial mathematics that lay behind the intelligently designed experiments in the first place. Again, all of science, every nook and cranny of it, is based on the presupposition of intelligent design, and is certainly not based on the presupposition of methodological naturalism. So thus, in conclusion, when examining the details of Darwinian evolution and methodological naturalism, we find that it repeatedly suffers from catastrophic epistemological failure, which is to say that Darwinian evolution simply has no foundation on which a person could build a coherent and rigid theory of knowledge. As far as epistemology is concerned, Darwinian materialism is simply a non-starter and should be rightly thrown into the dustbin of failed scientific theories.